Okay. You ever have one of those moments where the universe seems to spin backward? Where the people trying to put you down accidentally hand you the biggest victory of your life? That was me. Standing at the edge of my dock, coffee in hand, when three strangers in polo shirts and clipboards came marching down my driveway like they owned the place. They said they were from the HOA, and they were here to discuss a violation. A violation. I looked out at my quiet little lake, the one my father used to fish from, the one I'd spent every summer swimming in as a kid, and I couldn't help but laugh. See, the thing they didn't know yet? And what you're about to find out is that this dock, it wasn't just mine. The lake wasn't just mine. Every ripple of water they were standing next to belonged to me. But before that moment of poetic justice, before the truth came crashing down on them, like a summer storm, there was a lot of pain, a lot of history, and a whole lot of heart. So let's start from the beginning. It was a Tuesday morning, one of those quiet ones where the mist hangs low over the water and the world feels like it's still waking up. My name's Eli Carter, and this little cabin, by the lake, is all I've got left of my dad. He passed 3 years ago, leaving behind nothing fancy. Just the land, the dock, and a lifetime of stories about how this water had a soul of its own. I'd been fixing the old railing, trying to keep my mind busy, when I heard tires crunching on gravel. 3 SUVs, shiny and spotless, rolled to a stop in my driveway. Out stepped a one with a tight bun and a clipboard, flanked by 2 men who looked like they'd been born to say, "No," for a living. "Good morning," she said sharply. "I'm Karen Dillard, president of the Lakeside OA. We need to talk about your dock." "My dock?" I asked, wiping my hands on a rag. "What about it?" "It's an unapproved structure. You're in violation of Community Code 12B. You'll need to remove it immediately, or we'll be forced to take legal action." I blinked. "This dock's been here for 40 years. My dad built it." She gave a tight smile. "That may be, but according to our records, this area falls under the Lakeside Homeowners Association jurisdiction, and all structures along the water must comply with current guidelines." Now, I'll be honest. I'd heard rumors about the HOA since I moved back after Dad's passing. They'd taken over most of the properties around the lake, putting up signs and rules, and acting like small town royalty. But this was different. They were standing on my land, trying to erase a piece of my family history. I told them I wasn't taking it down. That didn't sit well, sir. One of the men said, stepping closer, "If you refuse to comply, we'll file for a lion on your property. We have the authority." Something about that word, authority, made my blood boil. I'd spent enough of my life being pushed around by people who thought paperwork gave them power. I watched my father fight developers who wanted to drain this lake for profit. He always said, "Son, water remembers. It knows who protects it." So, I told them to go ahead and file whatever papers they wanted. They left, muttering something about non-compliance. And I went inside, shaking with anger. But underneath that anger, there was a flicker of curiosity. Something didn't add up. The HOA's map, the one they'd shoved in my face. It had boundaries drawn in thick blue lines. But I remembered my dad showing me a different map once. A hand-drawn one, with his signature at the bottom. That night, I dug through his old desk. Dust-covered deeds, surveyor notes, and then, there it was. A yellowed folder marked Carter Waterway Trust 1972. As I opened it, my heart started racing. It wasn't just this lake. It was every connected stream, pond, and reservoir within 50 miles. My father's signature was on every page. He hadn't just owned land. He'd owned the water itself. The next morning, when the HOA came back with their smug expressions and their warning letters, I was ready. I handed them a copy of the deed and said, "You might want to check your maps again. Because if you're standing on my dock, you're standing on my water." And that's when everything changed. Karen's face froze when she saw the papers. Her clipboard trembled just a little, though she tried to cover it by crossing her arms. "What exactly is this supposed to prove?" she demanded, her voice sharp but unsure. "It proves," I said slowly, "that the Carters don't just own the land touching this lake. We own the water beneath it. Every inlet, every stream feeding it, every drop that flows through this county. It's all under the Carter Waterway Trust." My father made sure of it. For a moment, all I could hear was the soft lap of the waves against the dock. The two men beside her shifted uneasily, one craning his neck to glance at the papers. "That's impossible," Karen snapped. "No private citizen can own an entire water system." I smiled, not out of arrogance but because I could almost hear my father chuckling somewhere in the mist. That's what I thought too. But back in 1972, the county was broke. My father bought up the rights to manage, maintain, and protect every navigable waterway here. It was meant to preserve the ecosystem, to keep people like you from overdeveloping it. Her expression darkened. "You're bluffing." "I'm not." I turned and pointed across the lake. "See that marina you just approved last month? The one you're charging people to use." I flipped another page. "You're collecting fees on my property. So before you come demanding I tear down my dock, you might want to figure out how much your HOA owes in back rent." That landed like thunder. The man on the right coughed into his hand. Karen said nothing. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back up the driveway, her heels clicking against the boards. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. 2 days later, a letter came, not from the HOA this time, but from the county council. They wanted a discussion, and, just like that, the whole quiet life I'd been clinging to turned into a storm. When I arrived at the courthouse, the meeting room was full. Reporters, lawyers, angry HOA members, all whispering, staring at me like I was some kind of outlaw. The county chairwoman, a tired woman named Marjorie Lynn, greeted me with a polite but strained smile. "Mr. Carter," she said, "these documents you provided, if authentic, they mean you hold controlling interest in all major waterways within county lines. Do you realize what that entails?" "I realize it means my father left me a responsibility," I said. "Not a weapon." Marjorie sighed. "The HOA's claiming you're abusing your authority to intimidate them." I almost laughed. "They came to my property demanding I destroy my dock. All I did was show them the truth." The room buzzed with murmurs. Then, from the back, Karen stood. Her voice cut through the air like a blade. "This man is holding an entire community hostage! We've spent years improving this area, maintaining the lake, managing safety. Now he wants to take control." I looked at her, not with anger, but pity. She didn't understand. None of them did. "My father didn't buy the water to control it," I said softly. "He bought it to protect it. When the developers came 40 years ago, they wanted to drain half this lake and build condos. He stopped them. That trust he created wasn't about ownership. It was stewardship. But if you people keep paving every inch of shoreline and charging residents for sunsets, then maybe it's time someone reminded you what stewardship means." The room went quiet. Even Karen didn't have a comeback for that. Weeks passed. The county verified the deeds. Turns out my father's signatures were real, the trust was legal, and the waterway rights had never been revoked. The news spread like wildfire. HOA members started backing off, the threats stopped coming, and for the first time in years, I could sit on that dock and breathe. But something in me had changed. It wasn't enough just to win. I kept thinking about the neighbors, the families who just wanted a quiet life, the kids fishing off the same docks my dad once built. They weren't the enemy. They were caught in the middle, same as me, so one Saturday morning, I called a meeting. No lawyers, no suits, just the people who lived around the lake. When they gathered by the shore, I stood on the dock, the same one that started it all, and spoke. "I know there's been a lot of anger lately," I began. "But this lake doesn't belong to me. It belongs to all of us. My dad created the trust so the water could stay clean, open, and alive. I'm reopening that trust. Not to profit, not to control, but to make sure no one ever has to fight over this water again. Someone in the crowd started clapping. Then another. And soon the whole shoreline was echoing with applause. Even Karen, standing near the back, gave a small nod before turning away. The sun broke through the clouds that afternoon, lighting the water like glass. I stood there, feeling the weight of everything, the loss of my father, the fight for his legacy, the strange peace that followed. Sometimes, life puts you in battles you never asked for. Sometimes the people who try to tear you down end up showing you who you really are. That dock wasn't just wood and nails. It was a bridge between past and future, between anger and forgiveness. And as the waves rippled gently beneath me, I realized something my father must have known all along. You don't own water. You care for it. You protect it. And in doing that, it gives something back. Peace, clarity, and the power to start again.